Hello, hello.
Oh, I love this. Glory, Crampton, glory be.
Hello,
Welcome.
everyone. Welcome to Sex Church. Here we are for our Sex Church Q&A. There we go. Beautiful. I'm so happy to be here. I'm just checking tech team. Let us know if tech is okay on your end. We always want to check at the beginning before we start dropping our genius. We don't want to miss any genius.
Yes.
Let's make sure we are good to go on that. Okay, awesome. Yay. Super happy to be here. Thank you all for being here. I see Larry, I see Glory, I see Moshe, and I see people in our Facebook community as well. In the Facebook community, you can always come on live if you want to as well and ask us questions this way. We are going to be here for 30 minutes answering any and all questions about really anything, but we'd like to try to focus it if we can. The focus for today, this month, we're really focusing on being with yourself. What does it mean to meet yourself in your sexuality? What does it mean to meet yourself in your energetics? What does it mean to actually be with you instead of just look at you or analyze you, but be in the energy of you fully, so that you can experience what we call openness, step 4, which is your orgasm. But before we meet ourselves fully, there's 2 more steps first. And so you can always ask questions about those steps as well, as needed. And then let's see if do I have anything else? I think that's it. We meet here every Tuesday, 1:30. And next week is something, I never know what's happening when, but next week is something awesome. So make sure to check the events and see what it is. It might be when we do our confessionals, which is a really fun opportunity to share your sexual experiences that feel a little icky, a little naughty, a little shame-based, and we create a community. Oh, it is confessionals, great. We create a community where shame is no longer going to drop us, because shame is really that energy of it really puts us down. It really makes us lose that drive, that internal aliveness that we're seeking when we're seeking sexuality. So we really create confessionals to release shame, release aloneness, which are really, I think, the 2 biggest killers of both sex and love. And then at the end of the month, we have an experience. So it's called the Sex Church Social. And that's where at the same time, same place, I guide you through an experience. So for this month, you're going to have an experience of meeting yourself. It's going to be an embodied experience. And then that way you get to practice it with us and be in the energy of authentic pleasure and authentic arousal. So that's what we're doing here. I'm going to kick it off with a question that I already got. And I love doing this because then we can kind of look at what the questions are already up, and it helps those of you on live kind of get in the hang of it and get your brain thinking about other questions. But if you have questions while I'm live, you can type them in the chat and I can answer them. And then we'll play it that way.
If you're watching the replay,
you can also put questions in the chat.
Still, we can get to them at another time, or another Q&A.
Yeah.
Know your voice and the question will be answered.
It will. It's really important to us that you get to have as much peace and just like life. We have a lot of life in our life. Our life feels very lifeful. It feels full of life and joy and bliss and love and ecstasy and all those juicy things. And we want it. I really want it. I really want it for everyone. Me. So we can ask all the questions so you can all have it. All of you, juicy, orgasmic. Yes. Okay. So question that we first got is around what we do with body pain. So this is someone that had been in Own Your Orgasm, and she had gone through the 4 days. If you haven't checked it out, we still have Own Your Orgasm open until Friday. And then it's going to come into this group. So you can watch it here in the community if you're not in our private group. It's totally fine. But we go through pretty intense stuff around sexual energetics in there. And so she was wondering what to do with her she has chronic neck and back pain that stop her from being able to feel like she can achieve that kind of bliss of the moment, the bliss of the orgasm. And so I wanted to speak to that a little bit because both of us have had a lot of, body moments, body pain in our lives, and we've navigated it a bit. And so first thing to understand is that the way that our physical body experiences the world is that it reacts to what's happening on an energetic level. So if there is a back pain or a body pain, and you can almost imagine that the energetic level is like this energy that I can see it, but most people can't see it, right? It's like these lines of energy flowing through the body. And that energy just gets kind of smushed, crammed. It's kind of like you're driving in LA traffic. That starts to happen. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're stuck on 495. Right? It's that energy. And so that's what actually causes pain. A lot of people say when we have pain, it's the body asking to be met, which is totally true. But there's the fact that the body needs to live in pain, or like we need to first feel the pain in order to pay attention to the body. I want to course correct that a bit, because we don't need to have traffic in our system if we allow ourselves to consistently move our energetics. And sexuality, that's what it is. Sex is just massive movement of energy. That's why it feels so great. Self-pleasure is just movement of energy. And we're like, thank you for moving energy. It's like it's been a drought and there's a rainstorm. It's like, thank you. Our plants are watered. So that being said, if you already have pain in your system, it's just a backlog of energy. Yeah. Now that energy, when it starts to come down into human form a little bit more, it turns into an emotion. Usually there's usually an emotion underneath of it. Sometimes some of my stuff is just energetic because I'm strange, but usually on most human bodies, there's an emotion that's kind of captured inside of the cellular tissue. So the body's really cool, because if there's pain somewhere, and you meet it, and you give it love and attention and focus in directionality, you're not fixing it, you're not changing it. And I have to really watch myself there, especially if I'm working on another body, like how much do I want to fix and change? If I'm making love to someone, how much do I want to make them go somewhere? Yeah. But if I just am with it and I can love it, I can feel it, I can be with it. And then it starts to just open a little bit. Yeah, there. It just kind of like, it'll melt a little bit. Yeah. And the way to make it melt more is if you spend more time in safety on your system. So if I'd spent more time grounding Sabs and helping them feel really comfortable instead of just like, zing, yeah, then the body is like, oh, okay, fine. I trust you. I like this. Thank you for touching me. So the short answer, because I kind of gave you a whole quantum talk, but the short answer is that all body pain is condensed energy. And when what we want to do is release the identity of it. So we want to release the like, I have a pain. Yeah. Because as soon as we do that, it becomes stuck there. We want to release the identity and instead remain curious when we go into self-directionality of like, what's happening in this part of my body. I'm getting curious. I've been having a neck thing and I just keep getting curious. Like, what? And then it'll really stuck in my body when I talk about how painful it is. You ever notice that? When you talk about how painful something is, your body's like, yeah. And then it like gets really mad. So we want to get curious about it without condensing it as like a thing that has to be there all the time. It's like when I used to have a chronic illness and I'd constantly tell people that I had a chronic illness, I always had a chronic illness. Like my body would just keep manifesting a chronic illness. Yeah.
You're familiar with Marcus Aurelius? He speaks very much on how your thoughts are what create your reality.
Yeah.
What you think you are and who you say you are what you claim to be. So if you say, I am angry, then you're angry. Because you're already attaching yourself to the emotion, you're attaching yourself to the identity of what anger looks like, of what that feeling brings up in you, and then you solely just become anger.
Yes.
And you there's this kind of separation, and like so much of that power is through our words and how we even speak of ourselves and our pains, and how we continue feeding those stories as we continue saying, I have chronic pain. I am an addict. I am an alcoholic. Like those things are loops. You can once identify with, yes, and yet you can still continue growing and continue expanding and not be that, and yet be everything and nothing.
And this really comes in the intrigue phase. So a lot of people, I think, try to go into directionality before actually feeling intrigued. So what I mean by that is they're like, okay, I'm feeling safe. Okay, now let me go and try to like release tension. Yeah. But the body hasn't felt any joy yet. Yeah. So there's nothing to replace the shitty feeling. Like the body's like, I know nothing else. I've had nothing. I've had no other experience. So I only know pain. And so the intrigue phase is really important because it's kind of like it's teaching the body authentic pleasure is what you now get to align to. Authentic pleasure is your new normal. And the body's going, really? And you're going, yeah, permission, 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 permission. And then you go, okay, but let's go in and clear out some of these clogged highways real quick. And then the body goes, okay, right? Because it's had the experience of intrigue. But I see this a lot, especially in the personal development world, where we just want to get right to the issue and right to the pain without first experiencing like the joy of being alive for a moment and getting attuned. It's like a frequency of pleasure. We want to get attuned to the frequency of pleasure so that the body can start to understand this is how I can live my life. I didn't know that joy was possible until someone showed me that joy was possible, but my body had no frequency for joy.
Yeah. I think if you look at it as it's just kind of running on the same current, and what we're trying to do is blip the current enough.
There you go. Yeah. We're blipping it.
That it kind of just like, it's like a record scratch. It's like, it's like all of a sudden now your anger is not feeding, or your that pain isn't getting the things that we needed before. It's now just become so much of our identity. So in creating a blip of, wait, but pleasure is also an acceptable form of experiencing pain through that. You can actually achieve pleasure through pain. So what if we, instead of thinking it's always pain, what if we find the pleasure in it? Is that possible? And when we do that, it's a blip. And our body goes, okay, now I'm in pain. Oh, but wait, I remembered pleasure. And the more we keep creating those blips and waves, we start to kind of rewire our circuitry around our pleasure and how we kind of react to the identifications that we've created in our bodies.
Yeah.
Free ourselves.
Yeah, it's calibration. Yeah, it's there's so much of us don't yet realize how much you can actually change.
Yeah.
Like, and to what degree you can actually change your cellular structures, your nervous system, like just the possibility of pleasure for yourself.
And I loved you even saying like what you didn't think it was possible until you saw it in another. And like so much of my life is filled with moments like that, because it's like, right. We are mirror neurons of one another. Yeah. So if I'm in my misery and I'm surrounded by it, and everyone I'm bouncing off is also in their misery, but then I meet joy, it's like, wait a minute, what is this? Hold on a second.
Yeah.
What is that emotion? How did that person get, like, what are they doing different?
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Glory. Good to meet you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Oh, bye. Thank you.
More questions that are appearing. If anyone has any other ones for us.
Yeah.
Great. Could you say more about how we honestly talk about what we're experiencing without congesting, identifying, and attaching to it? Yeah, great. So my favorite way to do this is to understand what's actually happening. So if I can be in awareness of what's true and real, and then still talk about what needs to be talked about, but from a frame of what's happening, then I'm okay. So for example, if I say I'm having, or this isn't, let me give you an example. I'm having neck, I'll just use my pain again. I'm having neck pain. Yeah, I'm having neck pain and I can't get rid of it. Yeah, there's an energetic signature to that. That signature is saying my neck pain will never go away. Yeah, and there's no possibility, creating zero possibility. So it's a closed circuit. There's nothing that's going to come in.
Nothing's happening.
So the frame now that I get to play it with is, okay, I'm perfect and whole and in bliss and pleasure because that's who I am. That's my core of me. And so let me go into self-pleasure and feel that to remind myself of who I am. Okay, now let me focus on this thing that's appearing in my experience that is not me. It's not me, it's not a part of me, it's an experience. So you could say things like, I'm experiencing, right? I'm currently having an experience. My favorite way to do this is through up-level venting that Kenya has, because it's not this, my animal body is having a pain in its neck, but my higher self has no pain. And I know this. So if I complain about pain in my neck, I'm going to do so within the container of this is my ego speaking on behalf of my animal. And then my body, it starts to understand, okay, so you're not trying to change me, but you also hear me and you validate me and you see me. And directionality is really about that, because when we go into directionality, like when I go in and work with my neck, yeah, I'm not trying to release it in one session because that's silly. There's nothing wrong with having neck pain. It's just an experience that I'm experiencing. I'm like, oh, great, I'm experiencing neck pain, right? So I go in and I have the experience of it and I'm going to meet it. But while I'm meeting it, I'm holding at the same time this kind of this expanded energy that comes through an intrigue. So I'm still holding this expansion and also meeting it. And I'm holding the polarity of the expansion. Okay. Like here it is. And to me, the expansion feels like my spine gets really long. But I've noticed on different people, they feel different things. Some people feel tingling on their feet or tingling in their crown. So I'm holding that. I'm not falling into a pain spiral of this is what the pain spiral would look like. Oh, you can see it in people's bodies. Everything kind of just collapses and then they get stuck in the pain. I learned this, y'all, through childbirth. This is where I learned this. It's in childbirth. If you crunch into the pain worsens.
Yeah, always.
But you also can't avoid the pain. So like people would try to distract me from the pain and I would get angry because the pain calls you towards it. So we have to be with the pain, but understand that it's just an experience that our body's moving through. Yeah. Be with it, but you're not trying to change it, because if you try to hurry up that baby, you know it's going to take longer, right? If you try to get out of the experience, it's going to take longer. And that's really where I learned it. I almost feel like there's such a blessing of deep pain, because in the blessing of deep pain, we get to learn this kind of non-attachment to our experience. And I really like that.
Yeah, that actually brings up a lot for me, because it has this feeling for myself. When I used to experience intense body pains, it would be like, what's the thing that I can do to remedy it? How can I get through this? Do I put an ice pack? Do I do this? Do I do that? Do I add like, it was always something to get rid of it. It was this feeling and uncomfortable experiences, I should say. In every uncomfortable experience that I've ever had in my life, yeah, I can honestly say I have done my absolute best to get through it. But whatever that means and looks like, it's just like this feeling of like, I just need to get through it. Like, this sucks. I don't want to be here. What can I do to just get through this and get it over with and done? And even just bringing that up tightens everything in my body, as opposed to really just opening it and saying, okay, sadness is appearing. There's this recognition of the emotion. Okay, sadness is here. And then I get to say, all right, I'm now aware that sadness is here. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, sadness. I get to detach from the emotion and say, okay, now that I know that this is what is here, I can now give it its form, whatever, but I can speak to it in a way. And then I get to be curious. I get to go into it and say, all right, now I'm aware of the sadness, and I get to investigate the sadness and say, what is this? And we get to do that over and over with our bodies, with our emotions. So much of it is just stored inside, and I can feel it. And it's, yeah, I love it. It's beautiful. It's my favorite practice. But yeah, separating from the emotion, becoming aware of it, the experience itself, and then kind of learning through it.
Beautiful. Yeah. So that's really directionality. We don't want to identify or collapse into the feeling, but we also don't want to try to soothe the feeling, but we also want to make sure we meet the feeling and not bypass it. So it's this very interesting space to be in. And I think that we learn it better the more grounded we are in our system, the more we earth, the more we can find that kind of safety at the beginning and then really achieve the intrigue too. Like once those two building blocks are there, directionality doesn't feel confusing. So if you're feeling confused in directionality, it's probably that we're missing those first two building blocks because they kind of show you, like the body kind of works it out on its own when those two are really solid rather than doing something to the body in that space. Great. Okay. Any other questions appearing that are here?
Is that of support? Does that resonate? Does that jive?
My brain tuned out for the last few minutes, so I think it is, and I will watch the replay.
I love it. I zoned out in one of our last calls too, and I'm like slowly getting some of the information now. So take your time.
But I guess just to check in, I think that on the initial thing, I think you were saying two things. One is to just maybe name the sensations directly instead of like a bigger social label of what's happening and identity. Like, oh, this is my chronic pain. That's like a whole identity. And naming sensations directly is more gentle. And then I hear you like inviting body into pleasure in the context of that before and after and throughout the whole thing to like loosen the knot.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Yeah, if you think about a traffic jam, right? If there's no exit, it's going to stay trafficked. So the pleasure is what provides the exits for that random road that you didn't know existed. And now you're not stuck in the jam anymore. So it's just creating those pathways for ourselves. Otherwise, everyone else is just sitting there stuck in the traffic jam. And pleasure, for me, erotic freedom is being able to choose that road when we want, right? When we desire to.
Knowing it's always there.
It's always there when we want it. Yeah. Hilda, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so I was wondering about this, like meeting this energy with this same energy, like in another, like somewhere in my life where I'm stuck, like with my ex-husband, there's like this, like, oh, and I want to move the energy.
Cool. Yeah. Let me reframe it a little bit for you.
Yeah.
So we don't want to meet it with the exact same frequency, just on an energetic level, because it will never work. It's very weird. And the reason it doesn't work is because two people, as well as two parts within you, never have the same perspective. So my neck has a very different perspective of life than my heart. And so if I try to find exactly what my neck is, I can't do it because my neck is having an experience that I can't conceptualize. Like it's just not. And like if Sabs and I are fighting, Sabs is having, we could be literally, this happens so many times. We literally are talking about the exact same thing. Yeah, the same thing. And we're saying the same thing, but it's jarring. Yeah. And because we vent to each other, it's very easy to see. We're like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Right. But even without it, you can see people, how they're talking about the same thing. It's like debates. You're like, what are you doing? Okay. So what we want to do is we have to actually go in and find the energy that the other person is living in for a moment. That's what we do. So if Sabs is pissed about something, or if I'm pissed about something, I'll use me. It makes it seem like you're always pissed about things. I'm pissed too. So let's say that I'm pissed about something, and Sabs meets me from their perspective of the thing that I'm pissed about. Energetically, I won't feel met. So what they get to do instead is they get to go, let me try to experience the world through Genevieve's sensations, eyes, and perspective for a moment, and just breathe that into my body. And then I'll go, oh, thank you. I feel met now.
Yeah.
And it's like millisecond. They don't even have to say anything. It's just millisecond. So that's what we mean in directionality. You're just matching. It's not so much the mind trying to find the same thing as like, can I just get the same essence of whatever that thing is? So with my neck, it's a different essence than I also have period cramps going on right now. So, but that's a different essence of pain. If I feel a period cramp versus my neck pain, they're doing different, it's not the same pain. So I'm going to meet them very differently, right? Like period cramps, I probably press in. Neck, I'm going to be lighter and more energetic just because that's what it wants. So I don't know if how much sense that made, but it's a really interesting thing with energetic lines. That's when the orgasm happens. When the energetic line is met, then the orgasm happens. It's really cool.
Fascinating.
Play with. Yeah, something to play with this week as you go through and just see where I also notice it with animals. If you take care of animals, right? It's a really great practice here because an animal can't speak to you about their perspective. But if an animal is worried or anxious or in pain or frantic, the way to get the animal to calm is to try to find the same essence. It's an energy within you that matches that animal. And then the animal goes, oh, okay, I can trust you. You can't be a human around a dog. You need to be a dog with a dog. And then the dog goes, okay. Right? So something to play with your animals this week. If you have any animals. Or go hang out.
No, I don't have any animals. I was just thinking about small kids. Like I watched, I work at a daycare. So I'm going to try that there. Just to
it's the same with, especially with daycare. Yeah. That's why I love small kids so much. Cause it's all energetic. It's the whole thing is energetic.
Yeah. They don't speak a lot. So I have to play with them. It's fun.
Well, the more you think about it, the further away you're putting them, right? You have to kind of go into this intuitive space. And that's what small children are. I always said if I didn't have this job, I would go work with little tiny children because it's a similar, you have to just kind of float with them, you know? You can't think.
Totally.
Then they're not met. So I love it. Awesome. Yay. All right. We'll play with that this week. The homework for everyone is to go and hang out with some animals or small children to practice directionality. And then when you're self-pleasuring, do the same thing. Yeah. Like you're doing the same thing with your energy. You're not thinking about it. You're meeting yourself like a small child or like an animal because that's what your body is. That's what's being stored. Your higher self isn't in there. Okay. Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on, and we'll see you guys next week for confessionals. Mwah. Big love. Bye-bye.